Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Batman Eternal. Bruce Wayne's money and his assets have been seized by the federal government. His home is now that of madmen once occupying the now destroyed Arkham Asylum. And after narrowly escaping a death trap set up by new Commissioner Bard, Batman discovers a startling revelation. Hush is not the mastermind of the grand conspiracy against him. And somewhere, the Riddler muses how Batman has yet to put things together.
Issue 37, scripted by Tim Seeley, introduces us to the Egyptian nightclub, where those who are equal parts rich and bored willingly lose their money for thrills. Their money legally stolen, as Selina Kyle puts it, observing the patrons of her establishment. It's boring and tacky, but a good place to hide money and has a decadent penthouse to make up for it. Selina calls her pets over for cuddle time, though for someone who goes by Catwoman and is such a famous feline aficionado, you'd think she'd know cats don't really respond to commands. Anyway, at the last second she avoids an agent of the Ghost Dragons and his fire sword. She takes this as a rejection of her earlier invitation to them, warning, while briefly on all fours like a cat, that she has the backing of the First Families. In the struggle, she kicks the assassin out a window, and he crashes through a boat in the decorative pool within the club. With security advancing on him, Selina recalls some fatherly wisdom from Rex Calabrese. Unless you're the biggest thing on the block, sleep with one eye open. If you are the biggest thing on the block, sleep with two eyes open.
It's a wonder any organized crime gets done. Those guys must be tired.
In Luke Fox's apartment, Rory whoever he is disturbed by the result of late-night Mexican food, because some guy's indigestion is just the thing this book needed. He turns on the bathroom light to find a kindly old lady sewing a quilt, the hitch being that she seems to be a ghost. She talks to Rory as if she were someone named Amadeus, about other boys being comfortable in their own skins, and presents her quilt to make Amadeus feel comfortable in his own, complete with a human face stitched into the fabric. She must be from Dante's sewing circle of hell. Luke, working late on some Batwing gear, hears Rory's screams and runs to his aid. He assures him that what he saw was the result of the taco joint he suggested, saying that the place wasn't very good, and recommending it was revenge for putting bad music on Luke's music player. He sends Rory to bed and returns to work, hinting that ever since Corgan cast a protection spell on his suit, it's like part of Arkham followed him home.
Oh, good. The unnecessary magic subplot isn't, over yet. I'm awake. Hey, whatever happened to Jim Corgan? Was he crushed? Is he just missing? Did he survive? Or is this another question that'll never get answered?
Batman is at the docks, following a lead that someone named Longshore Louie may have information on the old game of human trafficking. He asks about Arkham escapees like Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, and Bane, but Louis swears the ports have been dead. After dodging a crane hook, the story is corroborated by Killer Croc, but Batman isn't ready to believe him. Croc says because of unfinished business with all of them, he'd sooner eat them for dinner than let them pass through his docks, especially Bane, and he wonders why people assume he's a cannibal. Bat suggests that because he has no more friends or followers, he let them by, or perhaps Bane hurt or intimidated him to allow their escape.
For the very frequent talk of Croc having downtrodden people under his protection, we've met a total of 2. And they're both dead. Where are these people we're supposed to be rooting for Croc to protect?
Croc takes the remark better than expected, actually, not attacking Batman, but warning him about pushing the argument into a confrontation. However, as someone who has nothing, Croc can sense Batman is running on fumes. Arkham is gone, and an overcrowded Blackgate Penitentiary is only getting fuller, so there are more pressing concerns than Waylon Jones on the Bat's docket. Batman leaves, making a passing threat about turning Croc's skin into a suitcase if Bane skipped country. Croc's mockery of Batman, while amusing, is interrupted by Catwoman and her offer of revenge.
Is revenge a penny slot, or is it one of those card tables with like a $50 minimum bet?
At a Greek restaurant called the Tartarus, a group of villains has gathered in hiding. Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, and Bane, mentioned before, but also Mr. Freeze, Clayface, and Joker's daughter. Jonathan Crane says it's the only location not abuzz with police or gangs, but even as neutral ground to the underworld, it's not necessarily safe. He also mentioned he facilitated their escape from Arkham, but Freeze says he bartered his soul. Crane says he went to hell and back, not that we ever saw that in any way, so thanks for another tell instead of show comic. But anyway, all that exposition alone makes Scarecrow an ideal leader should they need to get out of Gotham.
I see you have majors in psychology and political science, a minor in advertising, and you actually went to hell for a couple of weeks. Interesting. Well, that is an impressive resume for an applicant for a travel agency, sir.
Though there are a bunch of questions to be raised here, like Joker's daughter is the one who strapped Crane to a table and threatened him with whatever she was doing to the other inmates, so why would he want her around? We never saw him actually go to hell or get any elaboration on that at all, and the last time we saw Clayface and Mr. Freeze, they were both subdued by Batman and left the police. And we also don't know how Bane got out from the caverns, or Joker's daughter for that matter. Okay, I better get back before I start pointing out all the other unanswered questions. Dr. Johnny Stitchface says that while fleeing is an option, the chaotic climate in Gotham is ample for people like them to seize power. Ivy's reluctant, but agrees, rather having them in sight in front of her rather than behind her. Clayface says he'll go where Ivy goes, as they may only have each other despite their histories. Freeze notes that previous city takeovers failed due to internecine wars, and there's value in unity, so he's in, which is weird because internecine actually means conflict within a group. What about this group isn't going to lead to infighting and end the same way as those other times? Though in such an event, he threatens ice-related torture, so there's that. Clown Girl Not Interesting says it may be fun to hang out with such colorful characters. Bane, master tactician and consumer of apples, doesn't seem interested. After Freeze notes how telling that may be, Scarecrow tries to stop the Bruiser from leaving, who replies he only stuck around to make sure the gas main he broke wasn't detected through the scent of rotting food, having planned on letting them burn, apparently. He threatens to break Crane until the scrawny Doc insists he can improve his venom formula. Allowed a moment to clarify, experiments he ran with the chemical resulted in double effectiveness and reduced side effects, results that can be repeated. Knowing Scarecrow is a skilled chemist and alchemist, I guess, Bane decides to stay with the ragged group, and with the new venom as payment. However, as observed by a cat with a collar cam, failure will not only mean Crane's death, but everyone else's.
That's right, Bane. Show how powerful you are. In fact, to prove just how serious you are, you should kill Joker's daughter right now. She may as well be useful somehow.
At a diner near police headquarters, Harvey Bullock muses to Maggie Sawyer how things went downhill, when the reason they went downhill strolls in. And this was such a nice rat-infested dump, too. Bard hobbles in, having looked everywhere for the last two honest cops in Gotham. He claims he can stop the infection, but slips on the linoleum before he can finish. He asks for a hand up, but the two detectives leave, with Bullock saying he didn't deserve the hand he gave Bard when he first arrived, or what the city gave him. Well, maybe except for the broken limb, disgrace, and alienation of his peers. Back at the Tartarus, most of the crew sleeps, as Bane plays Rocky Balboa, knocking a pig's hide around like a punching bag. Poison Ivy watches, having a back and forth that Bane doesn't fall for. Nothing about him is lesser, like those that would succumb to her charms. Ivy states that she's twice the chemist Crane is, and can improve his venom in exchange for joining him. We quickly jump to Selina, watching via a camera on Wilhelm II.
I wonder, will he scream?
She says she'll have to thank Penguin for the idea of a camera-mounted pet, so I guess this makes her a copycat. From the Batcave, Penny too would like to sleep, but Batman, observing the city from on high, insists on inventory. With him, Batman has 2 thermite weapons, one of which he'd retire if he had more, and Superman insurance. The Cave has a few cases of weapons, portable generator, 3 spare suits, one with purple gloves, first costume reference, and the dinosaur.
Wait, what happened to the penny and the playing card? Did Batman put those on eBay? And I missed it?
Batman sees a crudely designed bat signal and follows it to Selina's balcony. She's lounging in her underwear, which actually looks a bit tattered, but on the following page looks whole and undamaged. Weird. Pointy Ears doesn't much care for her using a signal, but Selina thinks it's because she chose a side, following in her father's footsteps. She figured he'd understand, keeping the gangs under control, and offers a present to show things between them don't have to change. Arkham's Worst wrapped in a bow. Julia, fairly annoyed by having to listen to Selina, gets a call from Luke, who wants everything Batman has on dealing with a haunting. And we see he's partially suited up as Green Ghost's plague Rory.
I'm checking the Bat computer and all it says is, call Dan Aykroyd?
Seeley scripts again for issue 38, which sees Batman riding a bat glider hauling some kind of bat bundle, headed for the Willowwood Home for Children. He doesn't need a map uplink because last time he was there he memorized the layout. Julia thinks she should be there to back him up, wondering how her father could stay in a cave while Bruce faced off against the city's vilest maniacs. Bats replies that he had experience, like watch his daughter go off to war, which is new information about Julia never before brought up, and contradicts the whole he was never involved in her life thing they set up before. So, par for the course for this series. Scarecrow's motley crew has moved to meet with a contact of Ivy's, and taken a few hostages by the looks of it. By the way, how can the one in the center talk with their mouth taped over? Scarecrow says that as creepy as Kane County is, a former establishment for mentally ill children is rather apropos, while knocking Basil Karlo's acting skills. Come on, dude, it can't be worse than Andy Samberg. He then opines on Mr. Freeze's new origin of having committed matricide, or how Joker's daughter might feel in a place for abandoned children while seeking approval of her quote-unquote daddy. Even Clayface having to constantly change like an orphan in front of potential new parents, or Ivy's proclivity for manipulating men. In fact, Crane insists he allowed hers and Bane's bloated egos to believe one is taking advantage of the other, so they'd be open to his suggestion, saying a good psychiatrist must also be a good salesman.
So Lucy from the Peanuts comics was a true trailblazer with his psychiatry stand. Too bad her football camp never took off.
At Blackgate, Rex Calabrese's massage is wrapped up when Jim Gordon wakes, and the guy named Manhandler is sent on his way. Jim's apparently been more resenting of Rex since his reveal, not that we've actually seen that, but only because he's had a hand in what's currently happening to Gotham. Lion thinks it's that he's now taking advantage of the clout his years of penance has deprived him of. And even though Jim and others know he didn't cause the train crash, he's still in the slammer due to outside corruption. Weird. When precisely did Jim start believing he wasn't responsible? He never stopped thinking he may be guilty. For that matter, since when did the other inmates believe he was innocent? Well, Rex offers to use his pull to get Jimbo free, but Gordon declines, still believing in the system and in Gotham. Meanwhile, Bats has subdued Joker's daughter with a length of his cape soaked in chloroform. This time he remembers to tie her when Julia mentions a massive cold spot nearby, and Bats readies his one good thermite grenade for Mr. Freeze. When she hears something above, Poison Ivy knows Batman is near, so she and Bane access the tunnels for an ambush, presumably after Crane and the others soften the Dark Knight up a bit. The bricks of this dilapidated hellhole crumble more easily than Batman's spine did.
What? Huh? Wait, so Bane did break Batman's back in the New 52 continuity? I guess his plan didn't involve learning Batman's secret identity, otherwise he would have recognized Alfred when Arkham fell. Way to make things less complicated, DC.
As they walk through the sewer, Bane remarks how Batman will die and he can conquer Gotham, and how he wants to marry Poison Ivy? He realizes something's up, and Pamela says the baklava he had at the restaurant contained walnuts and pistachios she grew, chock full of protein, and her personal additives to bring Bane under her sway. It even seems years of using venom had made him unfairly susceptible to her toxins. And yet we didn't see him eat any baklava, only what looked like an apple. Unseemed presumed events strike again. She then leaves on her own, with Bane left to contend with Killer Croc. Bane isn't terribly intimidated by a rematch. They last tussled during the Forever Evil storyline. Hey, an editor's caption! Could have used more of those in the previous 37 issues. But Croc reminds him that was above ground. Now they're in his world. The tactician scoffs at the sewers being Croc's domain, given what he endured in a prison, born and raised, crawling from its depths how he spent most of his days. Though, as much as Bane makes it seem like he had it rougher, wouldn't a prison be a step up from, the sewers? Raising his foe above his head, Bane claims each breaking has its own distinct elements that he will learn from. A failure to do so is what led to Croc's downfall. With a laugh, Croc bites off a tube that feeds venom directly into Bane's skull. Taking a break from that interesting battle to the aftermath of another, where Batman has taken down Mr. Freeze using iron oxide to warm his armor. What little there is. Kinda weird how the guy that traditionally can't survive outside a sub-zero temperature set goes sleeveless. Anyway, the hover glider is in position, guided by Julia's wartime training to fly every known type of drone. The Bat Bag crashes through a window, where we see Clayface, for the only time this page, and Scarecrow, who threatens to kill the hostages. But Bats decks him, saying that his colleagues were never afraid of him, but since he needed to operate on someone's fear, he used their captives. And they never mention where these captives came from, they just kind of appeared in between issues. Bats unties them and apparently uses the glider to lift them out, though we only see one of them, so we have to assume the others are higher up the line, or just teleported away. Crane grabs one, threatening to gut him, but Bats fires a couple of lidocaine darts, revealing the hostage was a now destabilized Clayface, leaving Crane all the more vulnerable. Returning to the smelly rumble down under, Bane scoffs at the tactics of cutting off his venom, saying it isn't all he is. Croc, however, suspects it's most of what he is, as he bites through his gauntlet of belts.
Careful, Waylon, you might have known whomever that belt was made from.
Like most people, Bane assumes the man-lizard must be ignorant based on his looks. Slashing away at the bulky bearer of many belts, Croc says that he reads, enjoys French literature, ooh la la, asks questions, and indeed learns. Way back when, after Bane tossed Croc off a rooftop, Scarecrow used venom on Waylon and several others, in aerated form so it would get to the blood via the lungs and burn off after a time. From that experience, Croc knows the venom is still benefiting Bane for a while yet. So, inquisitive monster that I am, I asked myself, what happens if Bane got no blood? Instead of going to Sesame Street, where most inquisitive monsters are found, the answer he came to was to leave a gash on each of Bane's limbs. Clever guy. Bane begs for death, but Croc would rather make an example of him. Meanwhile, Batman disarms Scarecrow, who says he knows something about the conspiracy that snaked its way into every aspect of his life.
Unless Crane knows he's Bruce Wayne, which I doubt, it's a bit presumptuous to refer to every aspect of Batman's life. I mean, sure, his life in the Cape is rough, but for all Scarecrow knows, he could go home to a happy family, wife and kids, picket fence, and a loyal dog that brings him his bat slippers.
It's all become too big for Bats to understand, says Crane, too vast a riddle to solve that he can't take credit for, but they know who can. And it seems to terrify Batman, with the writing on the sudden headbutt. It was clear he was talking about Edward Nygma, but it'll have to wait until the other escapees are caught. With the glider dropping the hostages off at hospital, Julia can't pinpoint Bane or Ivy, but Bats knows the former will be lying in wait nearby based on ego alone. And that's when he sees Bane, bleeding, arms bound by pipes, and a message written in French. Also blood. The king is dead. Long live the king.
I like that they're making Croc more three-dimensional with his cleverness and appreciation of literature, but they didn't need the reboot for this. They could have developed it without changing the entire universe.
Just outside the Tartarus, Selina is giving a payoff to Pamela Isley for setting up her cohorts. Ivy takes her money and leaves after a peck on the cheek, which Miss Kyle wants removed post-haste. You know, what with the whole mind control deal Ivy does. Shortly inside the former eatery, Selina heads a meeting with representatives of the First Families, telling them that there are vacancies left by the capture of Ivy's would-be allies, and Gotham can return to its rightful masters. At Blackgate, Bard is on one side of a visitation booth, looking like he's been hit a few times with a Steve Buscemi stick. He admits to going along with a plan that turned Gotham into a war zone, deprived people of their rights, and sent Batman and his crew scurrying when they could be helping. He knows how to stop it, but is lacking for allies. The other side of the conversation, James Gordon, says he did the right thing by coming to him. To continue doing the right thing, he needs to, properly and by the book, get him out of prison.
Hey, Jim Gordon! Nice to see you. Where have you been for the past 36 issues?
The last page is Selina basically condensing the issue before going to bed with an Egyptian-garbed Killer Croc standing as her guard and employee. Now we know what that revenge she offered him was. And I guess he'll be her two eyes open as she sleeps, which is a different callback. So, Ray Fawkes scripting issue 39, Julia reminds the reader of what Batman lost, while he replies, bearing an unusually white bat emblem due to a culling mishap, that he has everything he needs in the cave. He calls Red Robin for a report, who replies that he discovered a riddle with a standard cipher, and he solved it on site because bragging is awesome! Dad's old news, I place my bets on daughters. He must have meant solved a little loosely, as he asks Bruce what it means. He gets thanked and told to call if he finds anything else, and gives an annoyed "you're welcome." Julia comes up with an uptown roller rink, a defunct casino hotel on Miller Mountain, and an auto shop by the docks. Bruce doesn't technically own them, but neither does anyone else. Wayne masks up, apparently realizing where to find the Riddler.
You know, one of these days, Nigma's going to stop trying so hard, and his next clue is just going to be a sheet of paper that says, "Will Riddler strike here? Check yes or no."
A SWAT team is en route to Blackgate with the criminals Bats took down last issue, one of them saying it's one for the history books, and wondering if they'd get medals for it. I don't know, do they give medals for rounding up crooks that were already caught? Kind of like getting the blue ribbon at a state fair for store-bought vegetables. The vehicles turn into a parking lot, stopping before a limousine, and the officers pile out, only to be gunned down. A confused Mr. Freeze is ordered out of the truck. No time for explanations, it's off to the Gotham Gazette offices, where Vicky Vale is confiding with Warren about her confusion. Look closely on his desk, and there are headlines such as a fatal elevator malfunction, rush hour frustration, and drug shortages, very likely hinting at the subtler aspects of the conspiracy at large. After telling an intern, Patrick, that it's quitting time and he should go home, Warren calls Vale a wimp for crying over her boyfriend being a liar. She should get angry, not be hurt. Though even if they call Bard out for the least of his crimes, criminal negligence, the paper would be pilloried for conflict of interest. Perhaps that was part of Bard's plan.
Pillory, noun, punishment device. A wooden frame with holes into which somebody's head and hands could be locked, formerly used as a means of public punishment. Don't say I never taught you anything besides plot holes and bad reboots.
Warren insists that she do her job and prove what the police are doing. When they're called out as a shrew or a nut, they'll respond only with the truth. That's where we see the Batplane landing on a snowy lawn of the Bullseye Casino Resort on Miller Mountain.
It occurs to me that Miller Mountain might be named after Frank Miller, famed writer of the Dark Knight Returns series, Batman Year One, Holy Terror, and All-Star Batman and Robin, the Boy Wonder. In which case, expect this to be a racist mountain trying to turn Batman into a sociopathic murderer.
Bats enters the establishment, its furniture covered after long disuse. Several monitors turn on, relaying stories of Gotham's troubles, from bad traffic to kids sickened by sewer-tainted fountain water to fears of presumed unaccounted-for Arkham inmates and people eager to leave the city. Batman bellows for Enigma to no answer. He sees a question mark card and turns it over, to find another invitation to the collapse of Gotham. "You must be losing your touch." They go back and forth about the riddle that led Batman to the bullseye, specifically the slightly off arrow, a little miss referring to daughters, and whether it means Joker's daughter or Talia al Ghul. Enigma is part of it all. Except he's not. He says that he got the invite, but he ignored it and decided to skip town, as the whole thing was beneath him. With Gotham too dicey, he's been finding himself in seclusion. Batman notes that his initial clue mentioned a shared foe, indicating the mastermind is someone Eddie doesn't like. That's the wrong question, but he'll give Bats the chance to ask the right one if he can bring himself up to Riddler's level, even for a minute. Batman goes outside and starts climbing the mountain. There's no room up top for the plane to land, and it'd be so easy Riddler wouldn't talk. Batman takes pause as he sees a green box in the snow.
What'd I miss? Huh?
At the parking garage, the villains are corralled together, with Clayface confused on the situation. Bane quietly commands a joint attack, but, well, he punches a guy, and Mr. Freeze breaks his bonds by flexing like he's inviting people to the gun show, taking out another guard, and Scarecrow just kinda leaps up, saying they're panicking, though we don't see them panicking. A flash of light makes them stop, and more villains are released from another vehicle. Ratcatcher, Signalman, Firefly, I think Lockup, and Cluemaster, all with their gear and costumes for some reason. Out from the limo steps Selina Kyle, mentioning they wouldn't have come at all if they'd been properly invited as she was. A voice over the intercom agrees, saying they've gathered and it's time for some fun. Wait, fun or New 52 trying too hard and failing fun? Anywho, Batman follows a trail of Riddler boxes like a lazy side mission in an Arkham game to a cabin where Enigma waits. When asked about who's behind the attacks on Gotham, Eddie says he doesn't know, and goes on about the 100 Coens of the Blue Cliff Record. Or record, or something, I don't know what he's talking about. Bats, his fuse being shorter than normal, grabs him and asks again. Riddler says he already said that if he was smart enough to read his code, he'd already know his foe. If he can't see what's in front of him, then he's not the detective Enigma thought he was.
Yeah, detective, true detective, Matthew McConaughey. Joel McHale reference.
At the Gotham Gazette, Vicky scoffs at Warren's suggestions that the ills plaguing Gotham, each one she lists, are all connected. Upon closer inspection of reports of tunnels beneath Arkham, she begins to change her tune. Meanwhile, probably the rest of the SWAT officers are gunned down by gun-toting robots with bat emblems. Signalman thinks Batman's finally lost it, but the loudspeaker voice says, as we transition to a splash page, that what was once the Dark Knight's resources to use against them are now theirs. The only request is that they go to town. There's vehicles, money, and guns. A lot of guns for the guy that doesn't like guns. Speaking of pointy ears, he drags Riddler out of the cabin, who says that he's being worn down to the point of barely thinking. Eddie wants to beat him at his best. Instead of being taken back to Gotham, he hits a button on his cane, setting off bombs inside those green Riddler boxes, leading to an avalanche that takes up 2 pages. Back at the Gazette, Vicky is becoming more convinced of Warren's suggestion that he came up with off-panel. As they piece together more of the puzzle, Patrick the intern shows back up, throwing the quitting time line back at Warren, and also a bullet. He trains his weapon on Vale, saying she wasn't supposed to be there. But alas, you were! He opens fire as the issue ends.
Go away, Dainty. You take Joker's letter with you.